Scooby-Doo, where are you? Or if you're from the UK, that's Scooby-Doo. What you saying, my driller? Scooby-Doo, the live-action movie. That's right, 22 years later, and I'm still talking about this one. Yeah, it may not be the best movie or the best adaptation of a cartoon, but god damn it, I love this movie. It holds a special place in my heart as I grew up watching it for the most part, and rewatching it, I can appreciate things like the amazing casting. Literally every character in this is casted perfectly, especially Matthew Lillard. He absolutely just destroys this performance and couldn't have done it any better. They were originally casting Jim Carrey for the role, but he just does it amazingly, all of them. I love that it doesn't take itself too seriously and it finds a great pacing for its comedy. The story may be lacking in places, but one of the main characters goes through a really rough time trying to reunite with his best friend Scooby, and it clearly means so much to him. He's willing to risk his life, and you know, that's even more noble considering the fact that Shaggy is a complete dumbass. Before anyone says anything, by the way, I know it's a kids movie, okay, but that doesn't give it any excuse to not be a good film, which this one is. You know, look at films like Ratatouille, or well, just any of the Pixar films in general. You got other classics, for example, like Fantastic Mr. Fox, even the Lego Movie. You know, these films are made for kids, but because they're such high production and they just kill it in pretty much everything that the film is trying to do, the adults appreciate a lot as well, and it just makes it an all-round great film that everyone can enjoy, teens, kids, adults, and I think that's what this film does. Some people might disagree, but that's your opinion and this is mine. Let's watch it and see what it's all about. The film starts with the gang all together trying to solve the case of the lunar ghost. This is a perfect opener to introduce the characters, as you once knew them from the cartoon series and the movies, showcasing all the character tropes that they each possess. Fred is heavily charismatic, and of course he's the one who notices this the most. He also seems to struggle with caring way too much about his looks. He tends to lead the group for the most part. Velma is the smartest of the group. She's normally the one setting up the plans and the traps to catch the monsters that they encounter. Shaggy and Scooby are of course the comic relief of the group, and they just never have a fucking clue what's going on. This could be to do with the fact that they're stoners. Can dogs smoke weed? The fuck? Can dogs smoke weed? Probably just Shaggy is the stoner then, and Scooby is just dog. And then there's Daphne. I don't quite know what role she plays in the group. I watched a bit of the cartoons when I was younger, so I could be missing out on something, but generally she just seems to be the damsel in distress, and that's about it. She's ditzy, so that usually gets her in the situations where she needs to be saved. She's not that clever or that funny, so she just sort of sinks into the middle of the group pretty much unnoticed. This movie did do a good job of bringing her out of her vagueness with scenes later on in the film, so that's good at least. Oh god, how did Velma not dislocate her fucking ankle here? She's clearly connected by her ankles. She's falling down, so I guess she's got a bionic leg. I also love the way she falls down looking like a complete ragdoll. It's hilarious. It also made it sound like she's being shot by a machine gun as she's falling. The fact that Fred was aiming so smoothly all the way along the screen until he got to Velma, then he just targeted her. I don't know how to tell you this, Velma, but Fred clearly has a vendetta. Shaggy absolutely fucking shreds on a skateboard, specifically on this piece of machinery conveniently shaped like a half pipe. The gang managed to unmask the lunar ghost, and it was Velma expresses to Fred how upset she is that he's taking credit for her plans and ideas again, so much so that she decides to quit. Daphne also decided to quit as she doesn't like everyone always telling her that she's a liability.
I'm going to kill you, Daphne!
Whoa, whoa! Shaggy tries his best to keep the gang together, bless him, but it doesn't work. Even though Velma clearly appreciated what Shaggy was trying to say, they go their separate ways, and Shaggy tells Scooby, friends don't quit. Shaggy then says, I guess we'll do what we do best, Scoob, as the Dutchie plays and smoke is clearly coming out of the top of the van as Shaggy coughs and says, talk about toasting. And people tried to deny the stoner allegations. Well, to be fair, I don't think many people do, but I just wanted to say that bit. Yeah, it's a kid's film, but how can you not love the subtlety of the stoner jokes that they add through the movies and even in the shows? It's 2 years later, and Scooby and Shaggy get invited to Spooky Island Amusement Park by Mr. Mondavarius, aka Rowan Atkinson, aka Mr. Bean. They don't take much convincing. Once they hear the words, all you can eat, they're all in. You can see something is off here though, as this guy doesn't really want them to say no. We found out that Fred, Velma, and Daphne are all invited to this island to solve some sort of mystery. Shaggy once again tries his best to somewhat reunite the gang for an adventure together, but sadly fails. I love how Velma clearly has a soft spot for him and Scooby, when Daphne and Fred clearly care more about their image and what others are doing. Someone please take control of this flight. I've never seen a flight so goddamn chaotic. This would piss me off so much if I was on board, but I guess I'm not a chilled, laid-back dude, man.
Man, shut your bitch ass.
Shaggy meets Mary Jane, and believe it or not, he loves that name. Who'd have thought he'd love that name?
Not me.
What flight lets a woman just hold a cat on her lap? But then again, this is the ultra laid-back, tubular flight, dude. Mr. Bean greets the gang off the flight. He tells them there's a mystery to be solved. He thinks someone is casting a spell on the students to make them behave and not act themselves.
Are you tricking on me?
Are you tricking on me? Who the fuck says that? They have no intentions to solve the mystery as a group, as they're still fighting, so they decide to try to solve it individually. We're introduced to, I'm just going to call them Bald Guy and Rey Mysterio. Bald Guy is trying to do his job and act the part in this ritual going on, setting the scene for the students watching. But Velma has to go and be a smart ass, pointing out the projectors showing the monster in the fire. Bald Guy congratulates her for being such a smart ass with a pat to the head. Scooby gets a phone call telling him to go into the dark forest for some hamburgers, and because he's a stupid dog, he listens, and he leaves Shaggy to get blue-balled by Mary Jane. Daphne interrupts a voodoo ritual being taken place on a raw chicken. He says he's sacrificing the chicken, so he still eats meat, but he decides to sacrifice the meat before he eats it, or what? And the chicken is already dead, so what is the purpose of him sacrificing the chicken? Or is it just for comedy purposes, for the kids to go, ha, look, the silly man with the chicken, he's clearly lost it. Cuckoo. Voodoo Guy tells Daphne to get her skinny, aerobicized booty off the island, telling her not to go to the castle. Daphne thinks the guy's trying to fool her, so she decides to not listen to him and go to the castle instead. Scooby encounters a monster just like the ones we saw in the fire from the ritual. Now, even if the monster isn't scary in the slightest, I did, when I was younger, kind of used to be terrified of that noise they made. Scooby escapes, and people think he's lying when he says there's a monster because he points to this guy with some fucking sick moves. Yeah! Is that the Duracell bunny? Daphne selfishly decides that she's going to use Scabby? Daphne selfishly decides that she's going to use Shaggy and Scooby as bait for the spooky castle, so they die instead of her.
Girl power!
Daphne really has something to prove by solving the riddle of the island, so it would make perfect sense that she would ask Shaggy and Scooby for help, as it helps her out a tiny bit, and if she solved the mystery, she would take credit, and Shaggy and Scooby wouldn't. Not like they would care, but it's still funny that everyone just uses Shaggy and Scooby. I can't lie, the majority of stuff Scooby does in this film is cringy and childish and just not that funny. And yes, I know it's a kid's film, it's for the kids, blah 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 blah, but he does have some funny moments that even as a grown adult I have a little chuckle to. The mispronunciation of stuff still gets to me and reminds me of how much it made me laugh watching him in the cartoons as a child. Fred and Velma barge in and show that they're already 2 steps ahead of Daphne, Shaggy and Scooby. They decide to look for clues again as a group, but Fred takes charge again and groups himself with Daphne as he always did. Velma points this out to Fred and he takes her point. He decides to change the groups around. I guess well done, Fred, but at the same time, do you not have remembered that this is the whole reason that pissed Velma off in the first place, and that you just go straight into doing what you want to do and grouping with who you want to group with? Dick. They split up and we can see that they're being spied on by a short man. Daphne really does summon some of that girl power and she karate kicks a door open, but sadly gets killed. Everyone gets into their own predicaments, and it looks like all hope is lost. Even girl power Daphne has given up on her hopes of no longer being useless. Fred gets hit by a giant swinging axe, but luckily gets thrown the almighty Bible and ends up getting saved by Jesus Christ himself. Hallelujah. He switches off the power to the machines, and they're all okay. Who would have thought? Velma reveals a secret room that shows us a training video. Not just any training video, no, this is a video that seemingly teaches you how to be normal and act like a regular human and not threaten people with murder.
Hey, sorry, bro.
I will crush your bones into dust!
No big whoop, dog. Yo, did you catch that new vid on the box?
True that. I'm up to snuff on all popular trends.
Word.
Honestly, these days that first response was probably more accurate than whatever the fuck that second one was. It's clear that the students are being brainwashed here. Meanwhile, Daphne discovers a little artifact pyramid called the Damon Riders. She managed to escape a trap that went off when she picked it up. No children's movie would be complete without at least one fart. And boy, does this one knock it out the park. There are some mega farts being exchanged here. So much so that Matthew Lillard genuinely won a Kids' Choice Award for favourite fart in a movie. And it was for this bad boy right here. Now this is cinema. The short man presses a button to alarm the other bad guys that the gang are in the castle. They do a quick switcheroo with some statues, which was pretty funny, and we're given another fart joke. 2 fart jokes in the space of a minute. Wow, that is impressive. The gang have told Mr. Bean that he is a possible suspect. Velma decides to open up the Damon Ride This in the middle of a busy bar. You'd think someone as clever as her would do this somewhere a bit more secluded, no? Velma chats with a guy at the bar, where she gives a little backstory on the gang, more specifically when Scrappy Doo was acting a bit arrogant and pisses on Daphne.
What the dog doing?
They then decide to leave their dog in the middle of a desert. Scooby sees the same monster he saw earlier in the film in a window. Fred tries to assure everyone that there are no monsters, but the timing was quite unfortunate. Velma thinks the monster is wearing a mask, but soon learns that this is not the case. God, I honestly don't remember the CGI being this bad, but I have to keep reminding myself this was 2002. Daphne saves the Damon rice cake, but Mr. Bean fucking dies. Scooby then murders Shaggy, Daphne, and Mary Jane. Daphne tells Shaggy it's about time that Fred and Velma are the damsels in distress. This gives herself, Shaggy, and Scooby a great chance at proving that they're capable and brave enough to figure out a plan to save them. Mary Jane tries to call the Coast Guard to help, but after getting off the phone, it's clear they're not going to be of any help. They fall asleep on the beach waiting for the Coast Guard, but obviously they never show. They notice there's no smashed windows or broken walls on the building where the monsters came through. Wait, is that Sugar Gay?
What's that sugar gap in your fucking ass?
Daphne notices Sugar Gay's eyes changing color and gets creeped out. Fred is a douchebag frat boy now.
And we got beats like it was the listeners on Earth. You know what I'm saying, G?
No.
Rey Mysterio steals the Declan Rice from Daphne. Meanwhile, Shaggy and Scooby fucking shred some tarmac on some quad bikes. Hell yeah. They pick up Mary Jane and Scooby sees her get smacked in the head and he realizes
Mary Rainer's a rain in a mask!
Mary Jane is a man in a mask.
Scooby calls Shaggy whipped to his face and Shaggy hilariously says,
Oh yeah? Well, why don't you say that to my face, man?
Shaggy and Scooby continue to argue and Scooby falls down a hole in the ground. It's crazy how Shaggy actually took a huge swing at Scooby. The guy was fully prepared to just punch his own dog in the face. But then again, they did leave Scrappy Doo in the middle of a desert, so yeah, I'm not surprised. Shaggy tells Mary Jane he's going to save Scooby and Mary Jane accidentally lets out her monster voice.
No, Shaggy.
I mean, it's too dangerous.
Shaggy says, friends don't quit, and jumps down the hole anyway. He finds a bowl of protoplasmic heads, but I've always just thought of these as souls. Why does this look nothing like Velma? Could they not use Linda Cardellini's actual face here for some reason? He lets go of her soul and it returns to Velma's body. He does the same with Fred, but it doesn't get delivered back to his own body. Shaggy, being the dumbass he is, doesn't realize he can just empty this whole bowl of these protoplasmic heads so everyone can get back to their normal selves. In theory, getting the most help they can instead of just getting everyone from the Mystery Inc. group out. Daphne's soul gets put back into her body, but it turns out that it's actually Fred's soul, and then Daphne's soul gets sent into Fred's body. This is where Velma figures out that the monsters are using people's bodies because they can't survive in the sunlight. We then get a pretty hilarious scene where the actors do a great job of impersonating each character.
Daph, what's wrong with you? Don't you ever eat?
With the help of the voodoo guy, they figure out that the protoplasm in the giant bowl is going to be used as an energy source for Mr. Bean. He needs to absorb a purely good soul to complete the ritual, and who's the only one with a pure soul? That's right, Scooby-Doo.
Wait, won't you mean Melvin do?
No, sorry Scooby, it's definitely you, bud. Mr. Bean uses his ultimate gaslighting skills to get Scooby-Doo to be his sacrifice. Obviously, Scooby doesn't exactly know what he's talking about, so he just goes through with it. The gang hash out a plan to save Scooby, and it can't be an early 2000s movie without a good montage. Their plan is to spill the soul bowl and release the disco ball head skull to reflect light onto all of the monsters to burn them. I love how during this whole time of all of them setting this up, there is absolutely no one here. Their plan is to take over the whole world, and yet they don't have just one one security guard covering the protoplasm bowl just to make sure that no one tampers with it, especially with them knowing that Shaggy hasn't yet been caught by any of the monsters. Shaggy fucks up the whole plan, but in doing so knocks out one of the guys that's supposed to carry Scooby into the ritual, so Shaggy steals his costume to blend in. Meanwhile, Fred and Velma get caught out during the pre-ritual dance.
And back it up.
Shaggy apologizes to Scooby for not trusting him and he gets him to escape, but before they can do that, Scooby-Doo gets brutally murdered. Mr. Bean tries to absorb the energy, but Shaggy manages to swing on the crane holding Scooby's soul and he ends the ritual. Mr. Bean gets revealed to actually be Scrappy-Doo. He turns into Jumbo Scrappy-Doo and they're all after Scooby. Daphne tries to get the Disco Skull head released but is interrupted by Rey Mysterio. They get a pretty well choreographed fight scene here and Daphne gets to use her black belt skills that she said she'd been learning earlier on in the film. She kicks Rey Mysterio down the hole and oof, Jesus Christ, a spike like that going straight into his back, surely that would have just impaled him. Of course that's not PG though, so the souls get released back into the bodies of everyone and with the Disco Ball skull released, the monsters explode. Shaggy uses the crane pincer to remove the damn man right this from Scrappy-Doo and he gets a hilariously creepy de-evolution animation. The real Mr. Bean is released and Velma has a romantic moment with the guy she spoke to one time at the bar. The world is saved and outside the media are asking Fred how he solved the case. He was actually going to start telling them about his new book, Fred on Fred, and how he solved the case on his own until he saw Velma looking really pissed off. Then he decides to hand it over to her. I mean, like I said earlier, yeah, well done for realizing, but if Velma didn't make that face, would you have just stopped talking and taken all of the glory once again? I don't know, I just never really liked Fred in any of the Scooby-Doo movies. The gang agree to stay together. The gang agree to stay together and the credits roll. Now there's some people that say the second movie is better than the first and I can definitely see what they're saying as there's some big flaws in this movie. I think that making Scrappy-Doo as the villain was just a pretty bad choice overall. I don't necessarily mind it, but it's the fact that we just get a random flashback scene midway through the movie and he's getting in an argument with the gang and gets thrown out. It was literally a 2-minute scene and that's supposed to be his whole backstory for this film and wanting to get revenge on the gang and take over the world. I feel like they should have just either included him more in the film or not made him the villain overall. Honestly, I think them sticking with Mr. Bean as the villain throughout the film would have actually worked better. This guy has been off on an island, setting up his own amusement park to lure in students, turn them into monsters, and he wanted to get the gang to bring over Scooby-Doo as a sacrifice because he's an evil guy. I think it just genuinely would be a more believable story. I won't go too much into detail of the second movie right now because I'll do a dedicated video for it soon. Probably my next video, and that way I can compare them more. What kind of brain power do these monsters actually have? Because we learn that the monsters are inside these teenagers' bodies.
What do you mean by that?
When they're in the daylight because they burn otherwise. When we see the monsters at nighttime, we see them to be quite stupid and clearly more of like a animal brain compared to a human's. But yet when they're in a body, they know to be clever and not let certain people like Mystery Inc. know that they're actually a monster. What's stopping these monsters from returning to a feral state here and going after Mystery Inc? Are they aware that they have to behave themselves so Mr. Bean can lure everyone inside until it's nighttime for them to strike? Mr. Bean says here that these particular students are departing. So there are monsters leaving the island to go back home. Is that part of his plan to take over the world? Bring young people into the island, convert them to monsters and send them back off to their own home whilst keeping some to build this energy source protoplasm shit? If so, then would the world actually be saved at the end? Wouldn't we still have some stray monsters inside people's bodies back in their respective cities and whatnot? Or when the soul bowl was tipped over, do all of those souls fly across the country to get back to return to their bodies? And what if they returned at nighttime so the monsters can come out of the body and attack again? I don't know, maybe I've missed something, but I feel like that's a pretty big loophole in the story. Also, why is Mary Jane exempt from the training video stuff where everyone's talking like they're trying to fit in with the cool kids? Why is she pretending to be normal to Shaggy instead of just doing what the rest are doing and trying to get them? When did Mary Jane actually become a monster? Or, you know, has she just been like this the whole time and she's tried to lure Shaggy where she wants him? Was she a monster on the plane in the first place? It's hard to pick out where she actually would have changed. There's definitely parts of the movie that show how dated it is, like when Velma's outfit changes is to get the dad's attention when he's watching it with his kids, like, hey, look, boobies. They didn't really need to do that, but they just did it anyway. There's a few things that are a bit out of place for a kids movie, but I guess it's still catering to more audiences than just that. And the classic fact that film was actually going to be R-rated and Velma and Daphne were going to be lesbians, for example. So I guess it just must have been pretty hard for them to filter out all the non-sexual bits. I mean, for all its flaws, it does do a lot of stuff right too. The soundtrack is amazing throughout and it had me bouncing in my chair whenever it transitioned to the next scene with a little number like Bump in the Night, for example. There's a soft piano version of the main theme that gets used 3 times, and it's so perfect for each moment. You just know that the guy was jamming out elegantly when he made this.
Maybe I quit. I do? Yeah, I quit.
The film also has its fair share of comedy throughout the movie, albeit majority of it coming from Matthew Lillard, who, let's just say, without him, this movie would have struggled.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Bless you.
The casting is perfect for each character. Like, even look at this. Fred is just standing exactly like how Fred would stand.
And Shaggy and Scooby.
He always gets a cheap laugh out of me, man. His face is golden for Shaggy. It's one of the best casted roles I've ever seen. Just being able to see him reach for the hand in the background beforehand is so funny to me. I don't know, call me an idiot. You're an idiot. The fuck? It's also so funny to watch Matthew Lillard in moments like this having to react to a dog that's not even there. So props to him. He absolutely smashes it in this film in every way possible. But genuinely every cast member does do a great job in this and really embodies the original feel from the cartoons. And it gives it its own little flair, but it doesn't go too far to the point where it's unrecognizable.
I'm a suspect? I thought lesbians were good at solving crimes. It's like the one positive stereotype perpetuated by cop shows.
You can tell that the cast had such a great time making such an iconic cartoon come to life for everyone to enjoy, at least most, and I'm one of those people. I did enjoy. This film is still remembered and still good 22 years later, and I think it still can be for a very, very long time. I think it solidified itself as a timeless classic. I think you can watch this, 40, 50 years down the line and it'll still hold true to when it first came out. Yeah, the story's a bit all over the place, but it's definitely a fun watch, and you won't be let down with any thoughts that you had coming into watching this. That's it, we're done. I'm aiming to get a video out every month now, or maybe hopefully a few a month, but I'll do the Scooby-Doo 2 film next. That one is going to be an interesting one considering it's compared a lot and people think that the second one is better than the first, but I'll be the judge of that. But if you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. It means a great deal to me. And yeah, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.